The Pastor Who Hated Church. Follow Elvis Jung on his journey of redemption. Chapter 23. It took 2 days for Elvis to set up his office at the church. On Wednesday, Elvis sat at his desk and prepared for his prayer meeting that evening. It only took an hour and a half to complete. He went for a coffee. Elvis wondered what Archibald and Kip would do. He felt a growing sense of guilt. Pastors are supposed to be busy. He wrote himself a note to look for a good book to read. He could call that studying. He thought about writing something. His mind went blank. Everything about this seemed wrong. In one sense, it was easier being an associate minister. There's always someone to tell you what to do. He almost felt nostalgic about Evergreen and the table. Elvis shook his head. Ministry was an enigma, and he wasn't sure he'd ever solve the mystery. Half an hour before lunch, Elvis received a call. "Hello, Sturton Street Church," said Elvis. "Hey, that sounds great. It's Gideon. How are things going? Are you settling in?" "Not bad. I'm just getting ready for tonight," said Elvis. He didn't want anyone to know that he was bored just 3 days on the job. "That's great. If you need anything, just let me know." "Great, I appreciate that." "Oh, since I have you on the line, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. My grandma lives in Glenmount Terrace Nursing Home. If you have time, could you stop by and visit her?" "Yeah, sure. What's her name?" "Beth Haney. I think you'd like her. She was a missionary in Malawi for 30 years. "That sounds like an interesting lady," said Elvis. At least it was something to pass the time. "Great. That's great. I'm looking forward to tonight." "Don't set your hopes too high," said Elvis as he forced a laugh. "I'm just glad I don't have to lead it." That afternoon, Elvis pulled into the parking lot at Glenmount Terrace. It was the first time he'd ever been to a nursing home. It was like someone had tried too hard to make it look homey. There were large, colorful paintings on the wall and bouquets of artificial flowers resting on tables in the hallway. Despite the elegant touches, Elvis was acutely aware that he was in an institution. He pulled on the front door, but it was locked. He found a buzzer on a wall and pushed it. The door was opened by a woman wearing scrubs. "I'm here to see Beth Haney," said Elvis. "Third floor," said the worker. She turned and walked away. Elvis looked around. There was no one to be seen except an old woman sitting in a chair in the hall. Elvis decided to be ministerial. "Hello," he said.
"Who are you? Do I know you?"
she asked. "No, my name is Elvis."
"Elvis? Elvis Presley?"
"No, I'm Elvis Jung. I'm the pastor from Sturton Street Church."
"Well, I don't know you. Get out of my home."
I'm sorry," he stammered.
"I didn't invite you here, so please leave."
"What's your name?"
"I'm not speaking to you. You're a stranger and I didn't invite you. Please leave my home."
With each objection, she got louder and louder. Elvis blushed and looked around. "Ma'am, my name is Elvis Jung. I'm a pastor. Do you have a church?"
"Yes, but you're not my pastor. I don't know you. I didn't invite you here, so please leave."
From down the hall, a caregiver poked her head out of a room. "Edith, it's okay. He's a pastor. He's invited to be here," she said.
"What? He's invited, did you say? I didn't invite him."
"I invited him, so don't be rude. Elvis, is it? Beth Haney is on the 3rd floor. Don't worry about Edith. The elevator's just over there. It'll be fine," said the worker. Elvis moved quickly to the elevator. He looked back to see Edith sleeping in her chair. He reached out to hit the up button, but missed the first time. He stared at the numbers above the elevator. He wanted to avoid eye contact with other residents. The 3rd floor was bustling with activity. The elevator doors opened and Elvis was immediately confronted by an old man in a wheelchair.
"Get the hell out of my way,"
he shouted. "What?" said Elvis.
"You get the hell out of my way. I'm in a hurry."
Another worker came over and looked at Elvis. He was still in the elevator, too stunned to move. "Edgar, don't be so mean. Let this man off the elevator. He's busy too," she said.
"I got places to go. I'm busy,"
said Edgar. "Don't mind him. He's harmless," said the worker. Elvis was still stuck in the elevator. "Is this your floor?" Elvis looked up at the number board. This is the 3rd floor, right? Yep. Who are you here to see? Beth Haney. Is she here? The worker smiled at Elvis. Beth's a sweetie, not like this old grump. She held out her arm and pulled Elvis past Edgar. I'll take you to her room. Is she your grandma? No, I'm the pastor of Sturton Street Church. It's her grandson's church. He asked if I'd make a pastoral visit. Oh, said the worker. The enthusiasm dropped from her voice. It's this room right here. Elvis looked into the room as if he was expecting to get mugged. Mrs. Haney? Beth Haney? Yes, who is there? My name is Elvis Jung. I'm the pastor of the Sturton Street Church. Your grandson, Gideon Hook, asked if I'd visit you. May I come in? Yes, you may. You say you know Gideon? That's my daughter Helen's boy. He's a deacon, you know. Yes, at my church, said Elvis. He found Beth sitting up in bed. Her face was tanned and weathered. It was in stark contrast to her gleaming white hair. On her lap was her Bible. When he came into view, she removed her glasses and looked carefully at Elvis. Really, said Mrs. Haney. How is he doing? He is a good boy. He's doing well, said Elvis. Only then did he realize he had nothing really to say to this woman. He furiously thought of something. That's nice. Have you known him long? No, I've just started at the church. Oh, so you're new to the ministry? I was a missionary, you know, with my husband, Carl. We were in Malawi. What was that like? Oh, it was a long time ago now. Carl was a church planter and an agricultural missionary. He earned his degree in agriculture from Texas A&M University. So you're from Texas? Pardon? I am sorry, I do not hear too well, she said, cupping her ear. Are you from Texas? Elvis spoke louder. He felt uncomfortable yelling at an old lady. Oh, yes. Both Carl and I grew up there. Carl was from Fredericksburg. I grew up in a town so small I'm sure you have never heard of it. What's it called? The town you're from? Rio Frio. You're right. I've never heard of it. I am not surprised. Only about 50 people live there. So how'd you meet? We met at College Station. I was a nursing student. We were both in the same student Bible study. How'd you end up in Malawi? That is a funny story. We married after we both graduated. We prayed for God's will, something that would allow us to use our talents. One Sunday morning, an older couple, the Milsons, I'll never forget them, visited our church. They told us about the immense needs in Africa, especially in the areas of agriculture and medicine. It was like scales fell from our eyes. We'd never seen anything like it before. After their presentation, we approached them and told them how this burdened our hearts. They told us to apply to the Board of International Missions, BIM. It took a while, but before you knew it, we were appointed to Malawi. They were exciting times. Beth seemed to drift off as her head drooped. Elvis wondered if she were drifting off to sleep. Her head suddenly shook back to life. How long were you there, in Malawi? Asked Elvis. 30 wonderful years. Wow, I wonder what that's like, Elvis said to himself. What's that? Asked Mrs. Haney as she cupped her ears. Oh, I was just thinking I'm a long way from 30 years of ministry. The time flies by, you know. I envy you. I would love to be back at the beginning of my ministry. Really? Why? Doesn't it excite you? Thinking about the adventures ahead? The people you will meet and how you will see God work in mighty ways? I can't even imagine, said Elvis. Most of his ministry was filled with experiences he'd like to forget. What about the bad times? Doesn't it make you wonder what God's doing? Mrs. Haney chuckled. There were some hard times. They reminded me that God is always faithful. Faithful, Elvis thought to himself. He wondered if this woman was blessed only with success. He felt worse. Did you know I had 2 children? A boy and a girl, said Mrs. Haney. I didn't know that. You have Helen. What's your son's name? His name was Carl Jr. He died, said Mrs. Haney. Her eyes welled up with tears. I'm sorry, said Elvis. He felt bad for bringing it up.
My husband Carl and I were missionaries to Malawi. We were there 30 years, said Mrs. Haney.
You mentioned that.
Both our children were born there.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. I was a nurse. My husband, Carl, was an agricultural missionary, said Mrs. Haney.
Really? That's interesting. What was life like in Malawi?
It was hard. Malawi's next to Mozambique. They were having a civil war there. It was terrible, all those people dying. I worked in a clinic. We had a lot of refugees from the war. The rebel soldiers, the Mozambique resistance movement, would often come into Malawi to hide from the government forces. It was so dangerous. I will never forget when soldiers stormed our clinic. Carl was in the bush with some farmers. It was the planting season. That was one of Carl's busiest times. I was home with Helen and Carl Jr. They were so young then. I think Helen was 4 and Carl Jr. was a toddler. The rebels held us down at gunpoint. They did terrible things. Terrible. That day the doctor was away. They told me they would kill me if I didn't help their soldiers. Some were sick and injured from the war. I did not want to help them. If you help them once, they will come back. It scares the refugees away. They were the real victims. I was so scared.
What did you do?
I prayed. I asked God to save us.
Did he?
Mrs. Haney reached for a tissue and wiped the tears from her eyes. When I refused to give the rebels extra medicine, she sobbed.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Haney. I didn't mean to bring up bad memories.
I'm so sorry,
said Elvis.
It's okay, young man. It's okay. Once the rebels left, we tried to save Carl Jr., but he was already gone. The Lord took him home. Weren't you mad at God?
Mrs. Haney wiped a tear with a tissue.
Maybe at first, but God did not kill my son. The rebels did.
But God's in control, right? Couldn't he save Carl Jr.?
That is a question I cannot answer. We demand free will from God, but then we blame God when bad people use it. If you get mad at God, you are the only one who suffers, you know. Did you know that my husband and I were missionaries for 30 years? We were appointed to Malawi, said Mrs. Haney.
Elvis sat up. He never thought about it that way before. You said your years in Malawi were wonderful, said Elvis. How can you say that when you lost your son?
Ministry is not easy, replied Mrs. Haney.
But it's not supposed to be impossible.
It's supposed to be impossible.
I think you meant it's supposed to be possible, said Elvis.
Mrs. Haney sat up defiantly. I know what I said, young man. It's supposed to be impossible. If it were possible, we would not rely on God. If we try to do things in our own power, we are doomed to failure. God calls us to live completely dependent on Him. The sooner you learn that lesson, the better.
Elvis sighed. He looked at his watch. It was 3:30. He had plans to have dinner with Sparrow in 2 hours. It's getting late. I need to get going. Beth ignored him.
Do you know what I learned when I was young? I learned that it was more important to be a follower of Christ than be a follower of church.
She spoke emphatically. Wait, doesn't that give you an excuse to avoid church?
Of course not. You cannot be a true follower of Christ if you do not love others. You cannot love other believers and not be part of the community of faith. In fact, true followers of Christ look for opportunities to serve others. There is no such thing as a selfish faith, said Mrs. Haney.
You served people who murdered your son, said Elvis.
Yes, but ministry is caring for your neighbor, especially if they are your enemy.
Elvis's head was swimming. He was in awe of this woman. She spoke with wisdom, but at the same time she showed signs of dementia. He reached out and shook her hand. "It was great meeting you. I'll come back for another visit." "You are a dear. How do I know you?" she asked with a smile. "Your grandson is a deacon at my church," said Elvis. "That's nice. Is he doing well? He works with computers, you know." "He's very helpful." "He is Helen's boy." "God bless," said Elvis. "He always does. More than I will ever know," she said. Elvis walked quickly back to his car. He didn't want to risk another encounter with Edith. As he left, Elvis wondered if Beth Haney was an angel in disguise. Thank you for listening to The Pastor Who Hated Church, written by Timothy G.A. Cooper, narrated by Greg Cooper. Tune in next week to hear the next chapter in Elvis Jung's Tale of Redemption.